he was 6, we rode on horses made of sticks. He wore black and I wore white. He would always win the fight. Bang, bang, he shot me down. Bang, bang, I hit the ground. Bang, bang, that awful sound. Bang, bang, my baby shot me down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ground Up. I'm Jay. Today, I'm here with a very special guest, somebody who was willing to speak to me after I reached out to him. This person is someone who is known for, um, I would say, their history, their past. So they have a past, and we're going to talk about that as well as their personality. We're going to dive into who this person is and what makes them who they are. Um, This person is Anthony Arillotta. Sir, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing good. Thank you.
And that's good. That's good. I just want to let you know before we get started how honestly how grateful I am because I'm not really, I'm just anybody and you gave me a chance to you sort of like helped out the underdog, so I really appreciate that. Yeah. This person is uh it's hard to say, it's hard to get these words out right now. This is an ex-captain of the Genovese crime family. So Anthony, how was that like being a captain of a crime family?
Um, really wasn't different than my life in the criminal world. Really no different. It was it gave me more power amongst the people that were in the under that type of life, the mafia life. But amongst them, through um, you know, the inner circles of the mafia gave me power. But other than that, it really didn't do anything to where I gained anything in
Anything,
life. You know,
right? And I've heard from your past interviews how you talked about how before you had joined, you had already had your own endeavors, and sort of joining made the situation worse off as
oh
opposed to better.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I joined, I was involved in the pretty much the same life. Only after I joined, when I got formally inducted into the mafia, pretty much that year on was just um, uh, I went downwards instead of up.
Yeah.
I spent since that year probably 90% of it in prison, um, and the money that I did actually make after that was that money's gone, um, which was a lot less than I made prior to joining the mafia. So
And sorry, how much was that? How much did you make?
when?
How much money did you make in the mafia and before the mafia?
Well, um, I made millions and millions prior to the mafia. Like prior to joining the mafia, I was pretty much set for life. I didn't need them. I didn't need to join there. Um, I didn't have to work again as long as I lived. I had businesses. I had, you know, a great life. And when I joined the mafia, I made millions again, but that money was, um, you know, short lived, and it was that money didn't last. Put it that way. That money was um, uh,
Just
gone.
siphoned out from you.
Yeah,
So what was it that made you actually want to join? Because you had before you said you were set. So why did you actually get into the life?
it was kind of like it just happened. I was always around that life growing up, being Italian. Um, and if you're an Italian and you're a wild kid committing crimes on the streets, you're going to get sought out by the mafia leaders in my area, and which they did. They want you to be around them, and you just work together with them, and you make your money, and it wasn't really much. I mean, that's like the ultimate goal for a young Italian, is to get made into that organization. Which, if you're young, everybody wanted that. But as you get older, you get more smarter, and you start thinking, like, really, do I need that? What do I need it for? Smart guys don't take it, they don't accept it, they walk away from that, because they have they're more educated, and they understand that life can't bring them nothing but death in prison, and horrible things. And so I kind of like it, just for me being formally inducted, it was just like, not by accident, but just the way things were happening at a certain time, and and I ended up being involved in certain things that had to be done, and I was around, and those things got done, and then next thing you know, I was made.
Interesting. So it's just a natural course for you in your environment. Okay.
Yeah, growing up, it was come natural. And
what was your childhood like?
I had a great childhood. I played, went to Italian school. Really didn't care about school. Played sports every day of my life. Played hockey 10 years. Played every sport there was. And that's what I did as a young kid, growing up playing sports every day. And up until my mid-teens is when I started getting involved more of, and always getting in trouble too. I was always in trouble, always getting in fights in school, and in our little group of friends, we were always fighting other groups, and then I would say that lasted until mid to late teens, and then I started really getting involved on the street crimes right around that period.
Was this
Late,
during the this 80s?
yeah, around the late '80s is when I started making money on the streets. Um,
Okay.
but I was always in trouble with the law, always getting arrested, assault and batteries, fights, um, you know, prior to that, but not for
Interesting.
money purposes. It was just for, getting in fights, and, getting arrested for them.
Just for that. So the main point of this channel, we talked about this before, is basically diving into the actual person as to like how they function and how you operate. And so I've noticed you talked about things like how you did sports when you were younger, and you didn't like school a lot. You sort of got into fights. Um, is there any sort of patterns that you saw in yourself that made you think that you were not, maybe built for school, or that you weren't built for that type of environment? Is that what that was, or was it more so of the outside factor? Was it internal that was causing more of that, or the external?
Well, I just didn't like school because I don't like authority. And, I didn't like the teachers, and, being a, I don't like, I don't like listening, or following rules. And so I just didn't, and I really wasn't interested in school. It didn't have my interest. There wasn't one subject. I was good in all subjects as far as, but never studying for them. Just, I could spell, I could write, I could, read, I could, but I just, none of the subjects interested me. Sports what interested me. Um,
Interesting.
so that was the only thing as a kid I was really interested in, is sports, and getting into trouble, getting into fights, and and just having, I had a good childhood. I, always busting balls, having fun, and but school never did anything for me.
Interesting. Another thing that we had mentioned before is that how you sort of you're comfortable being around people. However, you don't necessarily like to be in, if you don't like to speak in crowds and that type of stuff. So, would you say that whenever you're interacting with people, do you like prefer for them to interact with you first, or do you prefer to interact with them?
Yeah, that either or doesn't bother me with that. I mean, I'm okay with being in groups and social gatherings, and uh, I pretty much want to go up and be the one to start a conversation. I pretty much, they would come to me. Um,
Okay. Interesting. So the people you like
Unless I
you.
knew them,
Okay.
really well, then I would be going up to them first. But I would have to be comfortable with them. And
Interesting. That's very interesting. So yeah, you said so you're interested in sports. Usually people will come up to you. All right, so I have another question for you. Whenever it comes to situations, let's say you just simply had to tell somebody something, right? Let's say somebody there was something wrong with maybe something incorrect about the way somebody was doing something. Would you tell them straight up, even if it, hurt their feelings or whatever, or would you just sort of be courteous? Would you just try to say it in a nice, soft way, you
so
know?
if I knew what they were doing wrong, I would just tell them what they were doing wrong immediately, and then show them how to do it the right way.
Okay. So that's T. Okay. Another question. I'm gonna let you know where I'm going with this in a second, but pretty much, let's say you said you were in high school, which I probably already know the answer to this, but you said when you're in high school, or just school in general, let's say you had an assignment that was due in like 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Would you wait on the assignment? Let's say, would you wait on it or do it immediately?
So yeah, I probably know where you're going with that. In school, I would probably not even do it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But but that's not part of my life. Like if it's something like, I'm not a procrastinator. Like when I have to get things done, I get them done. But
Interesting.
back then it wouldn't interest me. Like if I was in school now, I'd probably be a great student because I want to learn.
Yeah.
I'm all about learning now. So if I had an assignment to do now, I would probably get it done way ahead of schedule. But if you told me that growing up, then I wouldn't even have did the assignment. I would have had paid some girl or smart boy or girl to do it for me.
So you'd use your intelligence to sort of get around the situation
Yeah.
because you didn't like the control. Okay. Hmm. That's very interesting. All right. We're gonna get deep here. The worst. Um. What is the worst crime that you have committed? What is the
The
worst thing?
worst crime that I committed, well, I'd have to say murder. That's probably
Yeah.
the worst.
Okay. And when you have to deal with this type of situation, when you're having to um go through this, what was the thought process whenever you would go out and have to do a task or whatever it is that you needed to do?
Well, the thought process would just be, you know, so you want me like I would just plan it. I would plan the everything down to and just go over it in my head, every single thing, so I wouldn't get caught
Yeah.
doing it. So I would just keep rehearsing it over in my head, planning it out, making sure that I had everything covered as far as everything that it entailed to get away with that, and um, and pretty much planning it. I never really is that what you're asking me? Like my thought process of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
you never really like thought about the like depths, like sort of like how it was, like how you felt about it. You just sort of thought about it as like, okay, this is you got to do this and you got to do this, you got to do this.
Yeah. I mean, it was once it was gonna get uh, that we were gonna do it. It was it was just like I said, planning it out and doing it so we get away with it.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Something that we had talked about before as well was how the only way sometimes in order for you to understand the situation or the depth of it, you have to actually go through suffering yourself. So yeah, you want to talk about that, your road through suffering or the struggle that you had to go through?
What do you mean in suffering in general? Like everybody
Oh yeah.
suffers in life at
Oh
some
yeah, yeah.
point.
So you're right. You had to after the fact, after all the situations went down, you had to you got locked up and everything, and you suffered because there was times where you didn't you've experienced loss.
Yeah.
We talked about the loss.
So well, in my life, I never had like a sleepless night in my life, and all the bad things that I've done. I always went home and slept, no problem, and never had any worries. Never really suffered in my life at all. You lose a loved one in life, but you grieve them. I never lost any. My mother and father. Well, I did my father, but you grieve them and you mourn them, and
Yeah.
it goes away. So it's you know, it's hard, but you get over it. And And I actually lost him when I was in prison, so I went through a lot of suffering. You know, people want to say like people kill people and this and that they're incapable of you know, going through suffering. But I mean, you take the most notorious, you know, Pablo Escobar, these guys that killed thousands of innocent people, and when he was, you know, away from his family, he suffered. He didn't want to lose his family, his wife, his kids, his loved ones, his freedom. He didn't want to lose his freedom. So, um, so I think everyone goes through suffering, and it makes you stronger, gets you to know about yourself. But I went through a different type of suffering because my suffering, and not that I deserved everything that I got in my suffering. You know, I put myself in that position. You know, I went to prison. I had a wife, kids. I had a girlfriend. I had lots of money. And so when you get, you know, I don't care what you are. No one likes just getting taken and picked up and away from their life.
Interesting.
Especially when, you know, what's the first thing you're going to think about? If you're a real man, you're going to think about your family. Your family comes first before anything. Who's going to take care of my three children? Who's going to support them? How, you know, and that's what you really are, you know, worried about. And yeah, so I went through a period of my life while I was in prison, and yeah, so I did do that. I have a suffering period at one point.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were talking about that whenever I brought up the situation, how I felt like I could relate in a sense because although I haven't dealt with anything to that extent, having to go and get locked away, I sort of talked about how just dealing with loneliness, being that I got issues myself with things like anger, and I've always been alone throughout life. And I meet the girl I was talking about. I went out to the city, and the first time that like I ever felt anything for somebody like that, to lose it was just like I couldn't even like I couldn't even cope. So
Right. So it's like when you lose somebody that dies, you lost them and it's over with. They're not coming back tomorrow. You know, you're gonna bury them, and you know you come visit them at the cemetery, and it's over. But when you break up within a relationship, it's a perpetual suffering. It's just you suffer, and as long as until you let that go, you have to let that go. Otherwise, you suffer every day, and that's the difference. And when you combine that with other types of things going on, never mind relationships, it could be your freedom, it could be your family, it could be friends, it could be you know your money. And when you start to get things taken from you, you have a barrel inside you that overflows, and once your stress level reaches a certain level, it starts to attack its weakest point, which is wherever in your body is your weakest. Your heart, your bones, your your lungs, and so your immune system is busy fighting off all this suffering that you're going through, and it's not fighting what it's supposed to be. And wherever your, like I said, your weakest point is, that's where it's going to attack. And until you find a solution to that suffering, it's just going to keep doing that until it's a debilitating suffer to your body. It's going to break you down little by little by little by little, until finally you're going to die from it. So you have to find out, what are you suffering about. And a lot of people don't want to look within, because it's all from within. All your suffering comes from within. It's never without. You break up with a girlfriend, okay, but the girl can't make you happy. You have to make yourself happy from within. The girl can add to your happiness. Money's great. I made millions and tens of millions of dollars, but the money can't make you happy. You have to be happy. The money can add to your happiness, and that's everything from the without helps you. Everything within is what counts. Everything without just adds to that. And so as long as you're suffering, you got to find a solution to it. And once you find the solution, fix it. How do you fix it? Whatever the suffering is you're going on is, and that's what I worked on while I was in prison. The last time, the 8.5 years I just did, is I worked on me. I worked on what's inside of me, what's inside, what do I have to fix, like within me. I read all kinds of books. I've read the best books that there are. Philosophy, I mean, it starts with the Bible. It doesn't matter what you believe in. Um, Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist, whatever you believe in, all the message is the same. And it's all one message throughout all of that, which is to do good, do what is right and have, high integrity. And it's not. So I got into a lot of philosophy. I read all kinds of self-help books, and that's what I did. And I've learned how to overcome adversity, and I went through a brief period of my life, probably a lot less than what I should have went through, but I just wasn't going to let any type of that defeat me, and so I learned all about it, and it starts within. You have to learn within to fix anything. That's how you fix it.
That this is something that something that you're talking about is, although you've gone to such depths, many people, not as many people have been in the same exact situation. However, it's so important to look within. That's something that goes for everybody. And so that's what I really like about what you're saying, is because that's what this is all about. When I study people, when I study personalities, and I study myself, it's about figuring out how I can overcome the things that make me who I am. I can figure out what it is that makes me deal with the problems that I do, as well as others.
Right.
Um, so it's very, very interesting. Yeah, I also talked about how I think like you'd be a great mentor, just because you have a lot of messages that I feel are very similar to where I want to go with my life, like how I want to grow as a person. And so could you like explain your story? You were talking about how whenever you were in the prison, you had dealt with a condition, the same one that my mom had dealt with.
Oh,
And so yeah, you had overcome that by being able to just let go of the issues that you were struggling with, the problems that you had.
right. Yeah. So it was around 2000. I had like halfway done my 8.5 year prison sentence, and I was sentenced to another 3.5 years. I just did about almost 5, and I had to do another 3.5. And I just knew that 3.5 was going to be, it was going to be uh, not good for my circumstances that I was in. Um, if I had gotten out, I still had businesses on the street. I still had, in touch with a lot of people. I had a good friend of mine that was with me for the 5 years, a girlfriend, and it was just, uh, it was all going to change because of the 3.5 years. So, like I said, I never had a sleepless night in my life, but when I got sentenced that night, I had my first sleepless night ever, um, because I knew what I was going to face for the next 3.5 years, which is I had to do another 3.5 years, and there was going to be a lot of changes in my future because of that. And so I kind of like, you lose everything. I don't care what people say. When you go through life and you get things, and you lose your freedom, family, friends, wives, girlfriends, kids, everything, money, it affects you. And so at that point in my time, it affected me. And so I got I started, you know, um, trying to, finishing my time and, moving forward. But what happens is when, like we were talking about, when you lose a death to somebody, that goes away, and
Right.
you grieve it and you mourn it. But when you lose everything and it's there, like you might have finances on the street that are there. You might have a girlfriend that's there, kids that are there. You know that's a perpetual, never-ending thought process in your mind. And what happens is, if you don't get it under control, it controls you. And that's what happened with me. I developed because, and I'm not a worrier. I never care about nothing. I don't worry about nothing. I'm never one of them types. I don't care about getting sick. I never get sick. But at this particular time, I guess that stress was getting to me as far as that part. So, well, I ended up getting diagnosed with a non-curable disease. Um, and I never knew it. It was by chance that I caught it. I was eating like 10,000 calories a day, and I was losing weight. I was down to like 150 pounds, and I was eating 20 sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, tuna fish, all kinds of pasta meals and rice meals. And I kept barely could make 150, and I was always like 175, 180, you know. So I got diagnosed with this thing. It was a thyroid. I had a hyperthyroid, and they diagnosed me with this thing called Graves' disease. The doctor in prison, he had it. He says, "Oh, he was a Chinese doctor. He says, "Oh, you got what I got. You got Graves' disease." So he puts me on this medication, methimazole, and a thing for your heart, a tenolol, and that's to low because your heart races. That's what happens when you have hyper. But I said, no, I'm not. I'm not one of these types that take medication. I never do drugs, and so I said, and I want to know. I want to figure out why I'm getting this. So I did all kinds of studying on it, and basically I learned all about the disease. And I found out I always ate healthy, but what are the best foods to counter it? What caused it? And the thing that causes it is Graves' disease, and it's uncurable. Graves' disease, there's no cure. If you look it up, it goes from hyper to hypo. There's not a cure for that. So I ended up finding out the root cause, and everything in every disease is stress. Stress is the number one cause in every single disease. It's just what that stress is. You have to figure that out. So in my case, it was simple. I mean, I was in prison and I lost everything. I lost a wife. I lost a girlfriend. I lost my, friends, money, my power. I lost, freedom itself. So, and it finally got a toll on me when I had to do the 3.5 more years. So I figured it all out of what caused it. And I just detached from anything to do with the outside world. And I stopped using the phone. I stopped using. I kept my workouts going. I ate healthy. But what I really did was I changed my thoughts, and I didn't. And I read all kinds of books on this. I read this book called The Healing Codes. I mean, I don't know what book I read that fixed this for me, but I did this thing called The Healing Codes. It's about energy in your body, and you do it for 3 times a day, 6 minutes at a time, and it's all through it's like a form of meditation. You do 3 times a day for 6 minutes, and energy that goes through your hands, and you connect to your the main parts.
So we were talking about dealing with suffering. You're dealing with having to go into the system, and you realize that only by looking within yourself that is you can sort of see what you need to fix and the things that you have to deal with. You have to deal with the
Right.
stress.
If you're totally honest with yourself, but a lot of people aren't, and I was like that too. I was never honest with myself, and what I did was, being in prison allowed me that time to read all kinds of self-help books, philosophy. I read the Bible, I read the Quran, I read all kinds of spiritual, motivational books, and through it all, if you read like 200 of those type of books, it's all the same type of message that's being delivered, only just different words written. And one guy that I really read, and he was the first guy that I really took on, was this guy James Allen. He the first book that I wrote with him was As a Man Thinketh, and he wrote these books back in 1904. And this guy is like brilliant. He got me on the path to figuring out life, figuring about myself, and it's just unbelievable. And the reason I did, I had time. I was doing prison time. I mean, what are you either gonna, take advantage of it and do constructive, work out, eat healthy, and educate yourself. And now is the perfect time to do that. And that's what I did. I educated myself with these books. I mean, I went on the treadmill, and I'd bring actually. I'll show you. I got a copy of it right here, his book. But he wrote 19 books in one. He wrote 20 something book, but I have the book where he wrote 19. So there's 19 books in one big book. And I read that book probably 100 times, cover to cover, and I'm still reading it today. So all these books, people don't want to hear about what their faults are and what their, what's going on inside them, within them. And in prison, you have nothing but time to reflect on all that. And if you're truly honest, I mean, who's better than pointing out your bad ways, he calls them elements, sins, than you are. You know what you did. I know what I did in my life. I know if at times I was jealous, if I had hate throughout me, and you knew anger, lusts, all kinds of, the darker elements. And you just, it's a process. You just go through yourself. And so I was doing that prior to me finding out that I had this Graves' disease. And then once I combined all these self-help books and all these, and then I changed my way I was thinking, I ended up, I said I wasn't gonna let that defeat me. I was gonna defeat this somehow. And I mean, it's not, you're not gonna die from it, but it's still, you're gonna be on medication your whole life, and it's not a good thing
bad.
to have.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it gets you, it takes away from your life, the longevity of your life. It takes away from, and if you don't control it, you'll die from this. You will die.
Like I said before, my mom had it, so it's very, or she still does, and she's dealing with it. So that's very
It doesn't go away. I mean, it goes from hyper to hypo, but it's still, you're on medication for the hypo for the rest of your life. And and so what made me a believer was all this knowledge that I got from these books, and all these self-help, spiritual, all kinds of, I read the Buddhism, I read the yogi philosophy, which is unbelievable. And all these self-help, all these books together, when I got this and I put all that knowledge together, I told you I was doing this thing called the healing codes. I was doing that. Well, I started doing all that, and then I started I used to go to the treadmill, and they used to measure your heart rate. So my heart rate before I was on the medication would be like 110 without working out. I mean, you'd have to go for a run to get it up to 120, 130, and I'm at 110 with doing nothing. So when I was on the medication, it was down to like 55, 58, my heart rate. And so I started measuring it every day, with the thing. But I just started feeling better. I changed my thoughts. James Allen says it. He says, your thoughts are what you are. Your thoughts become what you in reality become. So whatever you're thinking is what you really are. And your most dominant thoughts, like in my life, was when I was on the streets back in the day, was all about power and murder and revenge and all evil thoughts. And what's going to happen is you're going to send out to the universe, and you're going to attract like-minded people like you. That's how you end up getting around other murderers and other power-hungry people. And because you're sending out that to the universe, all those thoughts, and that's what you are. So you're gravitating everything to you. What you attract what you are. Crazy. You attract crazy people into your life. So all this knowledge I put together, well, when I finally started I went back to the doctor, and in prison, you're pretty much dead. In federal prison, the doctors, I mean, you're lucky, you got to stand in line. You're lucky if they even seen you. I mean, there was a guy that had a little size mole on his cheek, and by the time they saw him, it was the size of a softball, and he had cancer. He ended up dying in there. I mean, it's it's hard to get the treated in there. But anyway, and that's another reason why you want to take care of yourself.
Right. That's actually something I did want to talk with you about after this was justice reform. I just wanted to talk about that because I think there's
Yeah.
So it's very
But
interesting.
it made all this books that I read worth. I knew it was worth it by doing all that, because when I finally started going back to the doctor, it went from the hyper to the hypo. I went from your thyroid was supposed to be between 1.7 and 4.5. I was the lowest. I wasn't even at a point 0.001, and which is almost like death. I mean, that's how bad I was. And I had it so bad that I couldn't get out of bed. And that's what happens when you have it severe like that. It's just like you got aches all over your body. It attacks your blood. If you go get checked, your blood pressure's out of whack, your cholesterol's out of whack, your sugar levels, everything's out of whack because your thyroid's, something's wrong with it. So when I went back, it went from hyper to hypo. I was at like a 22. So he lowered my dosage. I lowered it. I went down, went back again a month later. I was at a 21. He took me off it. I went back a month later. I was perfect. And this doctor couldn't believe it. He says, I don't believe what's going on with you. He says, I have Graves' disease. I have what you had. And I go, well, I don't have it no more. Oh, and I weaned myself off the atenolol pills. Instead of taking 2 a day, I took 1 a day. Then I took 1 every other day. Then I went every 2 days. I got myself off of those. My heart rate was fine. I used to measure it every day on the treadmill. And every day I woke up, it was at 60. Every day during the day, I was at 60, 65. So, so then I got myself off all of that meds. And to this day, that was in 2015, I got diagnosed with it. 2016, right before I was coming home, my thyroid was perfect. It was the end of 15, and the end of 16, I was perfect, and I'm perfect to this day. I go get checked up every year, and my thyroid's perfect. So that shows you that everything that I read, there's truth in all that. And since I came home, I didn't think there was anything with everything that I read. I never studied something like that. But when I came home, I see all these YouTube videos and guys that I follow now, and that talk about this type of stuff, and about how your mind controls everything. Stress is the number one cause of disease. Any disease that you get, it's because of some type of stress, whether you know it or not. And you have to find a solution to that stress, and you will find the solution to that disease. And hopefully it ain't too late. And these people develop all these diseases because they can't figure out what's the stress that's causing them. And so all these books that I read put that together, and I became healthy by that. So whatever book, whatever book was the most that did it for me, because I did do the healing codes. So, I mean, if you read the healing codes, it's miracles that happen in that book. Now, I don't know if it was for that, or if it was just the way I stopped. I got to the solution of the stress, and I eliminated it totally, 100% done. And then, but yeah, and all that stuff paid off, and it works.
This is definitely I think this is like we're in a new era to where pretty much we're about understanding ourselves more and trying to figure out how we work as people. Uh,
Absolutely. That's what
something
it's all
that you mentioned.
about.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. You had mentioned how you were saying that people sort of have this thing that they think about, and we are our own thoughts. Something in psychology that I've learned about is that pretty much when adults get older, as we grow older, we tend to sort of think in the same type of ways, and we can't get out of that. And so, would you say that in a sense that your time that you had served was what ended up in actuality helping to save you? Is about having
Yeah.
the time to concentrate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been to prison almost right around 13 years of my life. And every single time that I went in, it benefited me being there, even though I didn't want to be in there. But like the first year I ever went to prison, I went when I was 21 years old. And I tell everybody, it was a greatest. I ended up, I had to do a 5-year sentence, but it was a mandatory. I had to do 1 year, which I ended up doing like 3 years on that, 3.5 years on that sentence. But because I came out, got in trouble, went back in, came out, in trouble, went back in. But while I was in there, I tell everybody this. Anybody that's looking to be on the streets should go to prison. And I went to the state prison. I didn't go to a county prison. I went to a state prison. And it was and I was around really good men in there that I met, and one guy in particular. And it just teaches you about, being responsible for, first time in my life I had I used to, live home as a kid. My family was good parents and everything. So I never went without. I didn't, have to, go out and, look for a meal that was there if I needed one. And, but it teaches you responsibility. It teaches you how to, fend for yourself, how to be a man in a violent society, and to take care of yourself, because you have to take care of yourself. And it's prison, but it's similar to like going into the service. Like you're in the military, and there's a regiment, there's orders that you have to take, there's things that you don't want to do but you have to do. You have to follow the orders, and you have to you become responsible in your life, and you have to put all, be neat with all your area, your bed and your all your locker with all your stuff has to be put in order and everything. So it's a great, it was great as a young, and every time afterwards, I always ate healthy, worked out, and always read all my prison sentences. But the last one, the one I just did 8.5 years on, is when I really, really put everything and just wanted to really just educate myself about myself, and you know, and that comes from philosophy that I read, but also from the self-help books. They're also educating you from within, because the self-help, instead of going to a psychiatrist, you're looking in the mirror and you're figuring out what your problems are. Unless you're a liar, which a lot of people are liars. Like, I used to be a liar to myself looking in the mirror years ago too, but if you want to know the truth and fix yourself, then be honest and find out really what your bad traits are, the
Right,
bad
the
elements,
negative.
and replace them with the positive of that, the virtues. James Young calls them virtues. So, like, for instance, what jealousy is, hating on someone else's success. Okay, so what's the opposite of that? Is wishing them good fortune, wishing somebody that might be a competitor, wishing them good fortune to go out, and they're making a lot of money, and truly wishing them, you know, um, uh, uh, success. Not just saying, "Oh, I hope he does great." You don't really mean it, And that's the
Right.
opposite of that. Just like forgiveness is a big one. People, don't forgive. They hold on to resentment, and they don't let go of the resentment, and the resentment's eating them up. It's causing them disease. It's causing them sickness, and they don't let go of it. And you gotta have to have forgiveness and forgive yourself, forgive that.
I do have a that's something that I do tend to have an issue with is forgiveness. And that's something I want to work on as a person because I realize that the longer you go on trying to be mad at everything, every little small thing, it doesn't help you in the end. It just ends up making things worse. You end up being alone and you don't, end up growing as a person.
Right.
Um, so that's something else I wanted to talk to you about was so oftentimes I think in this country we tend to like these things that we're talking about are very important, but we tend to react as opposed to try to prevent. And so, do you think that maybe there could be some type of system to where we could do more with education and educating people on how to learn more about themselves, like what we should do with the youth, possibly, or anything like that?
I think that if kids want to learn, they're going to find a way to learn. You know, and I think a big part of it starts with the family. You know, um, the house, your family that you're growing up with. I think it starts there. But there's, like, with me, I don't care if you offered me a free scholarship to Harvard or the top law or college in the country, I wouldn't have went. So it didn't matter with me. But there's other kids that were, no matter what, are gonna look to get educated and do what they take student loans out, which I can't believe, and they get themselves in debt at a young age just to go to college. My mindset was always like, I'd rather open up a business or do something like that, work for myself, than to waste and spend that money on a college. But I get that now as I'm older. I get college education is very important for people that want to go to college. Other people, I mean, I know guys that are multimillionaires that can't even write or spell, and they went into business at a young age. So I mean, it's all depends on. But I mean, I think the government offers a lot for kids and
Oh,
for
really?
people if they want it. I really think that if you want, there's grants to get into smaller colleges if they want it. I mean, I don't see it's if it's the individual wants it, I think they're going to make it happen. I can just say that the opposite of that is the worst thing you can do if you're not going to go that route is to get into to the street life, and then that's when you're really gonna, now you're playing a dangerous game where, everyone says, yeah, I'm gonna make the first million and I'm gonna get out. If they make $1 million, and that's never gonna happen. They make 1 million and they want to make 10, and I said the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then they end up getting in trouble and they go to prison at a young age, and um, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I think of that.
What have you been up like? What have you been doing as of recently? Like, what are some of your things that you're into, hobbies wise?
Well, right now I'm fixing up a property, so I'm spending a lot of time doing that. And I've been, that's taken up a lot of my time, fixing up and making real nice property. I like to make money.
Yeah.
I like that. I like to hustle, which but hustle legitimately. I like to you know wake up every day and have goals and a plan to go out, make money, to live a great life, to live a good life, to enjoy the things that I want. So uh, other than working out, I mean, I work out. But gyms are closed now. You can't with the virus. So I
Yeah.
go do whatever you can with pull-ups and push-ups, things like that. Um, you know, and I got a couple of other businesses that I'm looking into. But yeah, I like success. That's
Like
like what
success.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm very success driven as well. Very entrepreneurial, and I want to take this further when it comes to understanding people and everything. I think that honestly, I don't know if you're probably not too into the MBTI stuff, but I think usually people don't start off that interested. I think honestly, I think you're ISTP. I don't know if you know what that means. Introverted, sensing, thinking, and perceiving. And so I think that you are sort of like they're known as they're known as people to be usually like mechanical, very mechanically inclined, but I could be wrong. I don't. It's like a wild guess, but um, yeah. So it's a little it's like quirky, but yeah. For me, I'm considered to be ENTP, which is we're also known as like the debaters or the devil's advocate because we could be very argumentative at times. We could be very we like to think about ideas and sort of how to make do things. We're very inventive. So yeah. Um,
Yeah.
honestly, I think we've covered all bases. Yeah, I don't want to keep it too long. I really appreciate you. It's really been a great talk, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that you've been here.
Great talking to you too. I wish you a lot of luck. I mean, you're 23 years old, right?
Oh
And
yes,
you
sir.
got a lot going on, a lot of good things going on. I wish you luck with your with this channel. Hope it blows up for you, and you do have a lot of success. You seem like you're on the right path, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's nice talking, and I appreciate you very much. I really do.
Yeah, thank you also, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.